First, I had a book that I collaborated with someone else, and I had a little story that I wrote down. And although I was already an artist, I didn't illustrate that book. I
Mhm.
just I didn't feel like I had the time at the time, and someone else did. And then later on, I was like, I think I could do that and maybe do it better. And so I uh, started with the book that's about my second great grandmother, and I thought that one was important because it was a family stories.
Mhm.
And then I went on to the Witch of Yazoo. But my first book, I illustrated it all with painting.
Mm.
And the second one, The Witch of Yazoo, I illustrated it on the computer.
And how did you like one versus the other of doing the painting versus doing the computer art?
I like, well, I like both, I guess. There's
Was it
pluses and
kind of like
minuses. But
right?
paintings, I mean, I noticed, well, I had to paint and then I had to take a photo of it and had to get a pretty good photo of it and then crop it and then do all this stuff. And then doing it straight on the computer, I just had to do it, one time basically.
Right. And I've heard people say that sometimes when you do it on the computer, you could go back and make changes, whereas if it's painted, it's a little harder to do that.
Yeah, there was one scene that I painted over before I put it into the book because the other one might have been too violent.
Oh, is that kind of, I imagine that's like the kind of thing you have to think about, especially if you're doing children's books, is like, what am I going to include and what am I not?
Yeah, I didn't want to scare them. It's a scene about the Civil War, but which happened, but yeah, they don't need to see a picture of it. The words are enough.
Right. So was this in, let me see, the Tales of a Choctaw Girl? Am I saying that right? I wasn't sure how to say it.
Yeah, Tales of a Choctaw Girl.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And tell me about that one. You said that was a family story, a true story of growing up in Indian territory. Why is it so important for kids to hear these stories and to learn about this history?
Well, for one, there's not that many books telling about after removal from Mississippi to Oklahoma, about, the life growing up in Oklahoma as a child on the kind of the frontier.
Right.
And I think that, those stories are important because uh, children today, they just think of now or way back to, somebody living in a Chukka, which is a Choctaw house, uh,
Mhm.
pre-European or a teepee or something like that,
Right.
not stuff that happened in between.
Mhm.
There's a lot of stuff that
Yeah,
happened.
that's right. And definitely not something they'd learn about in school. Well, how did you learn about it? Is this just like family stories you grew up with?
These are, yeah, this book is based off of an interview that someone in Oklahoma did of my second great grandmother. I think the interview was done in the late 20s,
Okay.
although she died in, I believe, 68. But she grew up in the late 1800s in Oklahoma around the North McAllister area. And with that, um, she saw a bunch of things, during that time, like typhoid fever came about, the railroad came through, just
Hmm.
the Chisholm Trail was going through from South Texas through Oklahoma to Kansas City, Missouri. And
Hmm. Yeah, was it hard, like you were talking about before, to decide, okay, what's going to be okay to put in a children's story? Were there other things that you had to cut, or you kind of thought, how am I going to tell this so I'm not glossing over the story, but I'm also not scaring them?
yes, you know, like in my own mind, I had, like when I was reading her interview, I saw images of, a bloody axe and different
Hmm.
things. I even asked in different groups, Choctaw groups and stuff, hey, what do y'all think about this? Some were like, yeah, it should be in there. That's what really happened. But I'm like, I don't want to scare the kids. They can learn about it without seeing too much of the graphic
Hmm.
part. At different ages, you learn more and more. Just like in regular history, you start off with kind of small amounts and then they add on as the years go by. Same thing with any history, I believe.
Yeah, and then it also makes sense what you talked about. Some things like maybe you have it in the text but don't have the visual. That seems like kind of a nice balance too. What about one of your other books is the Witch of Yazoo, and that was based on a local legend. Is that can you tell us more about that one?
Yes, I grew up in Yazoo County, Mississippi, and um, all growing up, I heard the legend of the Witch of Yazoo. And well, the only other person that I know of besides now a fellow Yazoo and Charles Everett has written a book, a novel. But Willie Morris mentioned the Witch of Yazoo a few times, and um, he wrote books and like the movie My Dog Skip and different movies depicted some things that he wrote. But uh, I grew up with that, not Willie Morse's story, but just the story that he also grew up with, just our local legend, and we didn't really have a book on it. Some people
Yeah.
like him mentioned it, and now he's buried 15 feet away from the Witch of Yazoo, and
Mm.
her grave is still there in the Yazoo City Cemetery. We would go there on Halloween and,
Oh,
try to
really?
get scared, and
Right.
um, she still has chains there that are broken, and
Yeah.
um, yeah, everybody grew up with the witch. There used to be the Witch Way to Yazoo Festival, and for several years they canceled that because they said it was too pagan or something. And then now this year they tried to bring it back, but there was a big thunderstorm, and I was supposed to be a part of that, but it got
Oh.
part of it canceled.
Hmm. Well, maybe next year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's neat that they're trying to bring it back. I mean, it's like you said, it's not something I had ever even heard of before because I didn't grow up in Mississippi. It's neat for kids to be able to read about it, the kind of local legends. And you also have a book about teaching children first words in Choctaw, first animal words. And why did you want to make sure to do that and to help kids learn the language? Why is that so important?
Well, my late father died in 2018, and a few days before he died, he really, instilled or reiterated to my twin sister and I that, he wanted us to learn the language and he thought that the language was important. And he thought it was important that future generations learn the language because so much of it is being lost.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I didn't know any of the language besides, like Halito or, just basic words. And so
Mm-hmm.
I later enrolled into Choctaw One online and before the pandemic, and then the pandemic hit and kind of canceled the end of our Choctaw One, and then I started Choctaw One again, but yeah, so I wouldn't call myself a fluent speaker by any means, but um, like with many, we're trying to learn, and I think it's important, no matter how much to share it with others, even if it's a
Right.
small amount. I think
Mm-hmm.
every little bit helps to save our language and pass it on to future generations.
Yeah, and that's so exciting that you have that. I mean, now this is because there aren't that many books out there that would teach children Choctaw. That's so great that you have one that does that. Yeah, and what was the process like? We talked a little bit before about writing and illustrating books, and I know you've illustrated for other authors. What is that process like when you're illustrating your own work versus illustrating somebody else's story?
Well, when I'm doing my own, I have an idea already of what I just kind of have the scenes pictured in my mind of how it's gonna be, and so I just kind of have to implement them. That's all I have
Mhm.
to do. And when I'm working on with other people, I have to have their input and then, change something here, keep changing things basically. And um,
So you have
also,
a lot of back and forth with the author when you're working on the
forth and
Mhm.
They might have one idea of how something looks and you do it, and then they're like, I was thinking this. But
Mhm.
anyway, then you just change it if you can. And yeah.
When you're writing your own books, do you already have, does it come to you first in pictures or come in the words or kind of at the same time? How does that work?
Uh, Both. I think, like, say, with the Witch of Yazoo, I guess all growing up, when I was hearing the story, I was picturing things in your mind, kind of like you do when you're reading a novel.
Mhm.
And when I went to illustrate the book, I just kind of implemented what I was thinking in my mind, like
Mhm.
when I heard the story.
Now,
And
what about like for, because I know you also do fine art. Uh, how is how you approach that work different than how you approach illustrating a children's book? Is there kind of a different process or you kind of think about it differently or how does that work? Do you tend to
yeah,
do more painting?
in some ways, like they both, I guess, need a kind of a focal point and a background, foreground, and middle ground. But with the fine art, you're thinking more about, well, for me, I mainly do landscapes for my fine art. So I'm thinking about more of the color, I guess, in my books.
Hmm.
I don't focus as much on trying to get the colors exactly right. It just looks like, green
Hmm.
for the grass or what have you. Like, I probably wouldn't paint a painting with the bright green, a
Right.
regular painting. But this, I just wanted to make brighter colors for
Hmm.
children. They like those. I'm also a
Right.
preschool teacher, and so I feel like they grab the attention of the children more than
Hmm.
like tertiary colors, secondary colors that I like to use in my landscapes.
Sure. Have you read any of your books with your preschool students?
Yeah, there's one they really like is Stormy the Horse,
Oh,
which
yes.
was me when I was growing up in Yazoo, going to a farm.
What are their reactions? Are they surprised to know that you've written a book or
They're always like, "Look on the back," because my picture's on the back. There's Miss Samantha. And they're really excited.
right. And they love that I guess that one, but that's when you said it was about you on a farm and the horse. Is it do you think that that's why they kind of relate to that is because the animal story?
Yeah, they do like animals, and they even like Ray the Unstoppable, which is a my friend Raymond Kawasaki wrote, and I illustrated. And they always ask, "Is that your friend?" on the back, and I say, "Yes, that's Ray." And he grew up as a child with physical disabilities. Uh, he's a double below the knee amputee, and
Hmm.
they yeah, I think it's good to read diverse stories to the children.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Are you working on any other books right now, or do you have any that you're planning?
Right now I'm working on it's my first Choctaw number book. So it's
Hmm.
just kind of numbers 1 through 10 and then plus some of the colors.
And I'm not that familiar with how is the writing for it? I mean, does it have its own script, or is it like more like an English
They,
base?
yeah, they use it's English.
Uh-huh. I mean, the letters, I mean.
Yeah, they use the just regular alphabet.
Hmm.
Um, Regular alphabet. There's a few things that are different, like a nasal A or things like that. But um, besides that, it's pretty much the same phonetically
Mm.
of the
So,
nasal
like, if
letters.
somebody were to look at it who doesn't speak Choctaw, just an English speaker, is it pretty easy to kind of sound it out, or how do you do that? Do you have like a pronunciation guide, or is it just pretty phonetical how you write it?
Phonetical. In my next book, I will have a more of a pronunciation guide, just because
Mhm.
there's also two ways of spelling. Um, well, really three. There's a couple different ways. But like there's the Oklahoma Choctaw and the Mississippi Choctaw. They've changed some of their spellings, like and uh to make it where children can sound it out easier that are used to reading English. But
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, so I'm gonna
So
put
how
in.
did you decide which one are you going to use in your book?
Yeah, I went Oklahoma because that's what I learned, like
Sure.
Choctaw one,
Uh-huh.
and um that's what I'm most familiar with. So I'm yeah going with the Oklahoma Choctaw
Oh,
version.
that's exciting. Do you have any idea when you have that when that's going to be coming out?
Um, no, not yet. I'm hoping at the before summer of
Mm,
this coming year. That's my hope.
nice.
I usually give myself a shorter amount of time, but this time I decided to give myself more time.
Right. Well, that's exciting. Thank you for taking the time to talk with us. It's so good to talk to you and find out what's coming out and hear about you. You have some like quite a range of books that you've done for children. Would you say that they're all for kind of a similar age range?
Yes, yeah, I'd say from about 3 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Well, thank you for joining us today.